All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to class tonight. If you can turn on your cameras, please do. Rachel, sorry you're having problems. Hi, everybody. So as you guys know, this week we have a small class because a bunch of people are at the funeral convention of some kind over in Spokane, I think. But we're going to go over some important stuff tonight about your upcoming speech for next week. So hopefully tonight's class will be really practical. I think it will be. So let's jump right into it. So your warm-up for tonight, before we get into that stuff, is here we go. I'm going to put it right up on the screen up here. So we've been talking about social identities this week. Hopefully you've chosen one for your speech. Does everybody have one to go? Know which one you're going to pick? I'm seeing lots of nods. Good. So we've also been talking about storytelling. So tonight's warm-up is kind of a bridge between the two ideas. Oh, I'm still screen sharing. Ooh, there we go. I don't know what I just showed you. Did I just show you the warm-up? I might have just showed it to you. I'm going to put it back up again. It's two truths and a lie. Has anybody here played this before or a version of this before? Yeah. So this one, okay, I'll screen share and then push the button. Here we go. So with this version, I want you to think of two social, co-cultural social identities that aren't yours, and then pick one that is. It doesn't have to be the same one that you're going to share for your speech. There's a good chance that some of the people in your small group will have heard what you've already talked about on Tuesday, so pick something else. But we all are actually members of usually tons of identities. So yeah, pick another one. But then pick two that you are not a member of, or you don't consider to be your identities, and think ahead now. We're going to pause for a minute because I don't want this to be super impromptu. I want you to have a little bit of time to think about what you could say, what you could think of. And when it's time to go into small groups, take turns, and then see if you can guess. And if anybody does a particularly good job when we all come back together, I'd love to hear about it. Any questions about how this will work? Awesome. All right, because this takes some thinking, let's take a minute and think. What will you share for your two lies?
Is it two lies or two truths, Steve?
Two truths and a lie.
Okay. Okay.
Much easier. So only one has to be wrong. Sorry, I kept saying it wrong. Thank you. So yeah, you only have to lie once. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. Hopefully, is everybody feeling ready? I see Sky's ready. So we're ready. All right, let's do it. Here are the rooms. We're going to do this let's go for 15 minutes. So when you share yours, take some time to talk about it, right? I want you to try and sell it to the people in your group. So we're not talking persuasive speeches yet, but I do want you to tap into that a little bit. But the persuasion you're going to try and use is simply through storytelling, through simply trying to act like it's true, right? Enjoy.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
Hey, Rebecca, no problem. Everybody's in small groups. They're playing a warm-up game, Two Truths and a Lie. I'm sure they'll explain it once you get in there.
Okay,
Let's put you in one. There you go.
thank you.
Yeah. Woof, babe. Man, hey, I can see you.
Am I the only one back?
Yep.
Oh.
There he is. There's more people. Yeah, 10 seconds, then everybody else is going to be forced back.
I don't know why, but I saw that return from breakout room thing, and then I felt the sudden, like, I felt it being urgent.
Well, thank you for taking it so seriously. Hey, everybody, welcome back.
Oh,
Right. Did anybody have did anybody have a story to share? Was anybody super successful or have a funny story? Or did anything? I'd like to hear how that went. I sit here and I go like, I wonder how those are going. And I would love to know if anybody has any stories to share. No pressure if you don't, but if you do.
I'm terrible at that game.
Oh,
I was 0 for 0 with everybody. They're all such good liars.
Man, didn't go well for you though, Chris? No.
They knew exactly which one was the lie in mine. So yeah, I'm terrible.
What was your lie? What did you try and pass off?
That I was a certified paragliding instructor. I have been paragliding, but I would not be able to instruct anyone on how to do that. I've done it literally once.
uh I hope you guys are enjoying this. I have this weird wish that I could like spy on you all when you're in those, but I know that'd be ultra creepy. But I just wonder what's happening. And when I teach this class in person, I wander around the room. And so I like, oh, this group's doing that. Oh, this group's doing that. And then when I'm done, I'm always like, hey, you did this funny thing. Tell the class, and they'll go, oh, okay. But with you guys, it's always so secretive. So anyway, I hope you guys are having fun with those. And I hope you are feeling yourself. I mean, we're over halfway through the class. I know this class is shorter, 8 weeks, but we're over halfway through. I'm hoping you're feeling yourself a little more relaxed in those moments, like feeling a bit more willing to talk, feeling a bit more relaxed with these people and a bit more comfortable and a bit more as if this is your team. That's my goal. I really hope by the end of this, you'll have the experience of having successfully spoken in front of people and understand how that should feel. And then you can carry that into your whole future life is my hope. So that's my goal. All right, guys, let's jump into this next speech. So I want to talk next about visual aids. I have a lot to say, but I also have somebody else's have a video to watch. And I tend to say it all, and then I say, but I want you guys to hear from somebody else besides me. And then she says the exact same things that I said. So this quarter, I'm going to reverse it. We're going to watch the video, and then let's talk about it, because I think I think I just sort of forced her to say the same things I did. So let's do it here. Why can't I hear that? Where's sound? What's happening there? Why is there no sound? Is that a problem? If I do it up here? Sorry, folks, I am messing with it. Okay.
Steve, while you figure that out, I feel like I stumped my group pretty well.
Yeah.
Heidi, though, did guess my lie because I didn't elaborate. So I tried to pull something out last minute. I was like, oh yeah, it's this. So I did I was like, I have my own makeup business specializing in bridal makeup and special occasion, which is after being a celebrity makeup artist for 11 years. I also had my own chocolate confectionery business where I used to do breakables, hot cocoa bombs. So I have all the molds and everything upstairs in our spare bedroom. And then I am also classically trained in ballet and have been ever since the age of 7.
Which one of those was the lie? Those all sounded shockingly cool, but also believable.
Is it ballet?
Yeah.
Is
I
it?
was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I have 2 left feet. I can't just to save my life.
So you
So
did
funny.
you did makeup for celebrities?
I was a celebrity makeup artist for 11 years.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Wow, those are all really cool. That's extremely cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. Yeah. The trick seems to be with this game when as I've watched it happen is when students they don't have something ahead of time when they go like, well, I'm this and I'm this and I'm this. And you're like, well, it's the third thing. Like, yeah. I don't think I can make sound work tonight. So since Sherry and I repeat the same things, we're not just going to watch that video. Instead, I'm going to put it in chat for anybody who wants to hear this repeated by somebody else later. I'm trying a new setup with like 3 monitors because I'm crazy, and I think that's causing me to not be able to hear things. So let's just talk about it. I'm going to tell you what, Wilson, I'm just going to tell you. So visual aids for your speech. The main thing is we need to have one, and it needs to add to the impact of your speech. It needs to add. It can't just be, let me get rid of that. It can't just be fluff. I've had plenty of students do that, and I want to warn you against it because it's worth so many points for this speech. Like I had a student who, for example, one stands out, several stand out, unfortunately. I had a student who gave a speech about, I think, being Mexican-American. The speech was great. He made a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint had cute pictures of his pets. It was adorable. It didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. If it had been pictures of his family, at least, maybe he could have that would have at least something. But it was just his pets, who are decidedly not Mexican-American pets. They are whatever they are. And then he didn't try anything. He was literally just like, show a cute cat, show a cute puppy, show a cute whatever while he talked. Literally, that's the opposite of a visual aid. That's a visual distraction. Like that gives the audience something to look at and not think about your speech, right? That's terrible. I don't actually remember much about his speech, but I remember the cute animals. That's a disaster. So that's a good example of it not adding to your speech. So you want to make sure that it enhances. I mentioned on Tuesday that I played in a gay softball league. I want to show you that picture because a lot of times students like to share pictures. Pictures are great for this, right? As long as they add to what you're talking about. So I'm going to put this up. Bam. You're going to do it. There we are. So here is me and my team. So and there's the small groups that you get the other way. So I could, if I was giving a speech about gay softball, being a member of ECSA, the Emerald City Softball League, blah, blah, blah. Maybe this is my visual aid. I put this up. If I just put this up and I just said, and look, I play softball. That's me. Woo! And then that was it. And I stopped sharing and I walk away. That would have earned me 0 points for me, me judging me as a professor. I would have been like, what was that? That's neat. But that didn't add to the speech. You just literally showed proof that you play softball. It needs to add to us understanding the speech. How could I have done it better? Well, if I did it like this, if I screen shared and went, yeah, let me tell you about being playing in the Emerald City Softball League. So as you can see by this team, it's a gay softball league, but it's not all men. You might notice that there is one woman on our team up here. In fact, you might not know this, but we fight over lesbians. It's kind of a strange thing about the Emerald City Softball League is it's a bunch of men wishing we had more women on our teams. And every once in a while, there's a total women team and they take the whole thing. So when I was the last year, there was a rule made where you have a maximum of 2 women per team, which is such a strange problem that doesn't happen when I played in straight softball for City League. That's not how things were. And I think that's wonderful. So I could talk about that. Maybe I could use this picture to talk about our mascot. Like I talked about this on Tuesday. Like there's a little Care Bear throwing up a cupcake he's going to hit with a baseball bat. If I just showed that, that's not really meaningful. But maybe I use this to explain, well, we're called the Cub Cakes. And you might notice that many of us have bellies and have beards. That's because if in gay language, gay man with a beard and a belly is called a bear. And in each softball team has a sponsor. Our team is sponsored by Seattle's Bear Bar. And so that's why we chose that as our mascot. So we would, after our game, go to that bar and wear this shirt, and it made sense. It all kind of went together. Like, hey, look, bears. And they appreciated it. So I could use it for that, right? But if I just showed the picture and said, look, people, softball, the end, nothing. But if I use it to enhance your understanding of something, especially the woman, I think that adds a lot to it. You're going to probably remember that. You're probably going to go away from this and go, huh. You might even tell a friend sometime, did you know that gay softball players in Seattle fight over women? Like, that's an interesting thing. So that's what I want you to do with your visual aid. Whatever it is, it needs to add. Screen sharing like that is tricky. So I want to talk for just a moment about how to do it. You're going to have a chance later to practice in small groups, but it's that green button at the bottom of your window here that says share screen. I'm going to put you in small groups later and we're going to practice that if you want to, but excuse me, it is slightly tricky because if you click that screen share button, you can try it right now. Just don't then share something, please. But it'll pop up another window that you then have to choose what you want to share. And if you're sharing something that plays sound, you have to click the share sound button in the bottom left corner. Otherwise, all we'll hear is the sound coming through your computer into your microphone and then through your speakers. It'll sound terrible. So that's how you screen share. It is a bit tricky. So you want to practice that before you perform. You can practice it tonight, later, here in this class, but I highly recommend practicing it as you practice your speech. So later, if you're going to screen share during your speech, I highly recommend opening Zoom and practicing your speech with Zoom open. In Zoom, practice your speech that way. Screen share, practice popping in and out of it like I do when I'm teaching. That's important. Like I mentioned, also, I've seen plenty of students screen share. They'll screen share something that they're talking about for that moment, and then they forget to unscreen share. You've seen me do this teaching. They'll forget to unscreen share, and because it's not obvious exactly when you're the one doing it. And then for the whole rest of their speech, it's a picture of their dog, and they're tiny in this corner, and you're going to lose points because I can't tell if you're doing the things with your face. You're tiny, it doesn't work. So practice, and ideally practice with somebody else watching you. If you can do a Zoom call with somebody else and practice that way, that's ideal. But if you can't, you could also, through Zoom, record yourself and watch it or send it to me. And I'm happy to do that too. You can also set up a Zoom practice with me, but that would need to be either Friday or Monday, or you'd have to set it up for Tuesday before class happens. So you have to set that up ahead of time. It can't be the day of. But students who do that tend to do well. Just want to throw that out on the table. One of the example speeches we're going to see for our final speech is a student who had me help him with literally every speech, and he hated this class. He flat out told me every time we were practicing, he's like, I don't like this class. I'm not good at it. And I use one of his speeches as an example because if you practice, you can be good at this. Anybody can be good at this. So anyway, back to visual aids. That's if you're going to screen share. Screen share is a bit tricky. You can get all the points for having a visual aid and not screen share, though, if you do props or pictures that you hold up or something like that instead, but I still need you to practice with those. And remember to not have any blurring on. If you have your background blurred, it'll blur anything. There's a letter from Geico. It'll blur that if you hold it up here. That you won't be able to see that lizard. It'll blur it all out, no matter where you put it, unless you put it right at the same place as you, and that won't look right. So turn off background blurring if you're going to hold up something or an artifact or anything. And finally, artifacts are some of the best visual aids. Like some objects you can show us are some of the best. So keep that in mind if that would work for helping us understand. Some good examples of visual aids that I've seen in the past that I just want to throw out that you might not be thinking of, like, oh, that's an idea. One student in the past gave, his speech was about being, his identity was like, it was a hiker, something like that, but it was a very specific kind. This was like 4 years ago, the beginning of the pandemic. But he wore a complete like safety gear when he went hiking. It was summer. It looked horribly uncomfortable. But for his speech, as he was explaining this, he just stood up and he, like, as squeak, he put on the safety gear as he gave us the speech. So he just put on all of his, honest to God, ridiculous safety gear. And it worked great. It was a very effective speech. I think it was one of the more entertaining ones because there was something to watch him do, and he just narrated as he did the whole thing. Some other ones, let me get this off because I have a list over here to share. Other things that might help, photos, signs, objects, and artifacts. Oh, video clips. So video clips can be a great idea. Make sure if there's supposed to be sound, check that box, but also video clips can get long. So sometimes students ask me how much of my speech can be a video. Good question. Not more than a quarter. And that's just like a loosey-goosey amount. But don't have more than a quarter of your speech be a video. If it gets more than that, it starts to look like your speech is a video instead of your speech. So just try not to. That said, if you're going to show us a video in your speech, make sure that it's ready to go and that you have, you've practiced with it. Costumes, that's another one. Costumes and clothing. I talked about that guy putting on all of that stuff. Oh yeah, no problem, Chris. Costumes though can be beyond just like, I'm a guy who wears safety gear. Like if your identity is anything that a costume's involved with, that might work. Like I talked about, my softball jersey could work, right? I could have worn that instead of showing a picture and maybe explain the same thing. You could, like, for example, if your identity is like you go to Ren fairs, great, please show us what you wear. If your identity is a furry, that's a great opportunity to wear a fursuit if you own one. If your identity is anything that there's clothing involved with, that's a great opportunity. There's a great opportunity. And there's two more that people don't think about. A skit works as a visual aid. Now that doesn't happen often, but the times it has happened have been very entertaining. And that's where students would get, because this is remote, you get some other person who's in your household involved with your speech. And I wish I had a video of this one because it was hilarious. But the one that comes to mind, I remember this student, hers was about being another Latin American one. I guess there's a lot of Latin Americans here, but hers was about being Latin American, and part of hers was about how her family communicates. And so part of her speech, she like turned her laptop so that we saw her door, and then her sister came in and they had like a yelling match. And then her sister went out because like dinner was ready. And then she's like, and now, blah, 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 this is how it happens when it's blah, blah. And then the sister came in and they had a different kind of yelling match about a different time. And it was just about how their family communicates as Latin Americans. And it was adorable and funny, it was hilarious. And humor goes a long way in these speeches. So a skit, can you maybe get somebody else involved? This is a co-culture that you identify as. So if you know anybody else who also identifies as that co-culture, maybe they can come in and help you. Maybe they can come in and elucidate a little bit of this that maybe you can't. I don't know. And then the last thing that a lot of people don't think about that would work as a visual aid is a handout. Now, that would be something that you aren't actually going to show us or refer to during your speech, but it would be something like a document, say a PDF file or a Word document that you would drop into chat, like maybe at the beginning or at the end of your speech, but you would tell us, hey, there's a handout over in chat If usually it's if you want to learn more, that's the best place. So like some of these co-cultures, people might want to join. Maybe your co-culture is a really cool one, and you're like, hey, I'm into, dirt biking, and so I think you will want a dirt bike too. If you want to get into it, here's places to go. Here's how it works. I've made up a whole handout. It's now in the chat. You can go get it if you want to take a look. You can join me and my co-culture. That works as a visual aid too. As long as I will look at it. As long as it's well made and nice, yes. If it's just a picture of your pet, no. But if it does actually have the information that you say it has and it's useful, yes. Hopefully that all makes sense. But now hopefully I gave you some ideas that you hadn't thought of for visual aid that you're like, oh, yeah. So think outside the box. And if you have thought of something that I didn't mention here, and you're like, would this work? My answer is probably yes. But I would love to hear about it because I'd love to expand this list to anything. But yeah, any questions right now? I have just talked a lot and it was supposed to be a video. Yeah, Christine.
So if we were to do the handout where we either post it in the chat, would we say like when we're doing our speech, if you want to reference the handout, like for mine, the one that you and I discussed on Tuesday, say instead of doing the PowerPoint, if I was to say, hey, I compiled some statistics, here are, XYZ, da 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 da, would that be okay to have people just click that as opposed to sharing my screen and doing all of that? Or would you still want me to create a PowerPoint that I could share on top of that?
Either way is fine.
Okay.
The handout is completely fine. The one trick is people will not be going and opening it during your speech.
Yeah.
They just won't. So if it's like it's necessary to understand your speech, you don't want it in the handout. But but I don't think with yours it is. I think with yours it would be probably, I could imagine, especially at the end being like, hey, if you want to know more, if you need help, if this is you,
Yeah. And that's where.
that makes tons of sense and would be even more useful than a PowerPoint, right? Because a PowerPoint, you just see it and it's gone, and you're like, well, I actually need that. So
yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. Anybody else? All right. And that handout doesn't have to exactly be like, here's help for joining my co-culture. Last quarter, I had a student whose co-culture was being a Warhammer 40,000 player, and his entire speech was how to paint miniatures. And his handout that he did a miniature in front of us. So he had his visual aid was literally his entire speech, but his handout was like, he made a little handout on how to paint miniatures that he just made that he gave out to everybody. And I was like, you're adorable and this is great. Like this is the best. So it doesn't have to be like, here's more resources. It could be like, I made a guide on how to do this thing. Sure, really cool. So get creative. Any other questions or thoughts on this? Okay. Got a couple of chats. Oh no. Okay, I did put that video in the chat. So if you want to know more, the video in chat says a lot of these same things. I think she says more than me. She's good. Go watch that later, but not right now. So that's visual aids. I think that is all I wanted to say. Now I want to put you guys into small groups to talk about these. So I want you to talk about your visual aids with your group, and this place is where I want you to help each other. So if you don't have an idea for your visual aid, brainstorm. This is also the place, like the safety net. So if anybody in your group is like, I'm going to use this for my visual aid, and you think that sounds like a bad idea, please help each other. Please help them understand, because not all ideas are good. Somebody in your group might be like, I'm going to make a PowerPoint packed with videos, and I'm going to screen share back in from it, and they've never done it before, and you're like, it's next week. Like, are you sure you want to? Like, talk to each other, right? I can't individually talk to all of you, so I'm really hoping you'll do it for each other. But that said, stay after class if you want to talk. But yeah, I want you to put you guys in small groups, talk about your visual aids, brainstorm with each other, spend a good 10 minutes doing that, and then take a break. And then we'll come back at 7:05. Sound good? Awesome. All right, I'm gonna make new groups so they're a little smaller. There we go. All right, guys, enjoy. Why are you not playing sound? I didn't even think of trying that. Shit, okay. Why is YouTube not playing? Bluetooth network.
Don't panic. I'm here to help. But first thing will aid. A device that helps your audience to understand your speech. Your visual aid should be a understand your message. Be a PowerPoint presentation, a video. For most public speaking classes, you will be required to bring a photo or some sort of digital presentation. These visual aids will be used in conjunction with your speech in order to better. So you've been asked to include verbal citation or a website that focuses on medical research features, a piece written by one of the researchers, or the organization in charge of an event.
I just put my glasses.
Want anything in particular? No, I'm pretty good. Shit.
Yeah, that'd be great. And some sandwich and meat and cheese, and that's, yeah. I love you. I'm gonna have to push you guys out and teach the class yesterday. Shall we? Shall we? That's great. Buddy. You don't miss the bud. You don't miss the bud. Okay, you guys need to go out. And then close the door. Sorry, buddies. Woo. Well, that makes sense. If I pick something up that's on the desktop, that's a problem. Maybe I can just open it. We got time. We got 2 minutes. My cursor go. There it is. Let's go to. Come on. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. All right. So, visual aids. Everybody feeling good about those? Excellent. All right. We're going to move on. So, feeling good about visual aids. Next thing to talk about is citing sources. So, your speech requires you to cite 3 sources. Now, first off, I want to talk again about why you're using a source at all. So this is supposed to be a co-culture that you already identify with. So you might be sitting there thinking, I'm already an expert. Like if I was talking about being gay, what would I research? I'm already an expert. I'm as gay as I can get. But I'm not every gay person, and I don't know everything about gay culture, like at all, right? Like I barely just recently discovered drag. So there's a whole lot that I don't know. So what about you? What you might be like, I'm an expert when it comes to Jeet Kune Do, but are you? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're not actually into old cars in the same way as everybody else. And there's something about them that you missed. This is where research comes in. And you can, even if you know everything about the actual thing, you can research things like the history of it. You can research other forms of it that aren't maybe even yours, but that other people do, that they enjoy. You can research, there's a lot. There's a lot. If you're stuck and you're like, I don't know where to look, talk to me. Or look at Tuesday's class. I think I went over a whole bunch of ways you can look there, but talk to me and I can help you. But once you found that research, how in the world do you use it? So I want to talk about, you make sure that you do this for this speech. Last quarter, I had a student who was I don't know what his deal was. He was very impressive in his own mind. And I don't know why when the speech rolled around, but he was just like, this is stupid. And I was like, it's not. But he just refused to cite his sources for some reason, verbally. And then he lost the points because it's worth quite a bit. And then we had this weird argument where he was like trying to say that this isn't important. And so I realized I need to make sure that you understand verbally citing sources isn't just important because I'm asking you to do it. There are reasons. So let's talk about those. They're the same reasons that your English teachers have you cite your sources in your essays. It's not just for fun. That's not just to make you do more work. You're citing those sources so that, for 2 reasons, 2 big reasons. One, so that anybody hearing what you're saying or reading what you're saying could go find the same research, like could go look it up. Like if you say in your speech, I'm a furry, and according to this article in the New York Times, all furries are actually get $100 from the government. They just need to apply for it. Anyway, blah 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 blah. You might be like, wait, what? I want that $100. But because you need to know the source. This is a bizarre example, but there's a lot of other ones out there. I have many times heard students share a source that I have went, is that real? And then looked it up and found out, no, you took the source way out of context. That's important. That's important for me to help you understand that that's not how you use sources. It's important to understand that without a source, you're standing on nothing. It's our politics in this country have been rife with that for years now, and a lot of our country doesn't seem to mind. But this is college where we do mind, and so you need those sources. The other reason isn't, besides people looking it up, is something called ethos. So this is going to matter even more in your final speech, but I want to bring it up now. Aristotle, we're talking about Aristotle now, like 2,500 years ago, ish, Aristotle came up with what he considered to be the 5 pillars of persuasion. He came up with how people are persuaded. And we still use them today, which is crazy that we haven't updated this. He was onto something. When we get to the persuasive speech, we're going to talk about those 5. Really, there's 3 that are important. There's 2 that we don't really talk about. But of those 3, the 3 main ones, one is called ethos. And that translates into current day words as credibility. Your credibility makes you persuasive, and your credibility is terrible if you stand in front of people and use sources without citing them. You've seen this happen. You've watched people use sources and be like, I don't think that's true. Or where did you hear that? You've probably challenged people before in your life. I know I have, but I'm also ended up becoming a professor, so who knows? But I know with my parents, with my friends, with my people, I'm like, where did you hear that? My dad would always be, my poor dad would be like, I saw on the news that the scientists are going to do blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, which news and which scientists, Dad? And he'd be like, I don't know, and it would fall apart. And that was my dad and I's relationship. I don't know why I became a professor. But yeah, that's a terrible situation. Weirdly, that man watches Fox News now. Which isn't a news network. If you want to defend that, we can have a conversation later, but it's not. It's not. It's entertainment, and it's destroying our nation. So you need to have sources, and they need to be good. Otherwise, when people listen to you, you'll come across like a Tucker Carlson. You'll come across like a person who says things for money, says things to get a rise out of people for their political gain, but not because they actually care about truth, not because they actually care about justice, not because they actually care about helping the world. And that's what I want from you. I want you to change the world for good. So this speech is just a speech about a co-culture that you're involved with. But I want you to practice citing your sources because it's really important later. It's really important for the rest of your life, not just for those important moments, but for just everyday conversation. I wish more people did this. I wish more people would got comfortable with saying, I heard, ooh, the volume was getting weird. I'm glad it's better now. I don't know what was going on. I was just flailing like a Muppet, so I didn't touch anything. Weird. Anyway, I'm glad it's better. Anyway, hopefully that made sense, my little rant. I think that's important. I think it's very important to learn how to cite sources. I think it's important to learn how to verbally do it, but it can be awkward. It can be awkward. That poor student who was like, I don't want to do this. When he finally did, he approached it exactly like an essay. And that is good. That's better than nothing. But an essay is just slightly backwards than from an oral speech, right? So in an essay, when you say like, oh, what's a source I could cite? How about if I was to, my speech is about wolves. I'm giving you a speech about wolves, and I say, wolves have the largest natural range of any mammal on Earth, second only to human beings. That's, I think, true. I said that in a speech like 20 years ago. I can't remember my source, but say, for example, if I was to share that in a speech, wolves have the largest natural range of any animal on Earth, blah, 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 according to the National Geographic. If I say it that way, that works. That's the way it would be in an essay, right? I share the information and then I have a citation. Maybe it's a parenthetical citation, National Geographic. And then oh, cool, that came from the National Geographic. That works in an essay because reading is different than listening. When you're listening, you want to hear what the qualifiers before you hear the information. If you hear the qualifiers after the information, it doesn't work right. It's sort of like hearing a story out loud versus reading a story. If you read a story and it says, if you just read these words, don't do it, she whispered. If you just read those words, it works because you can retroactively put those words, don't do it, in a whisper in your mind because you're reading in your mind. I don't know if it's loud enough because you're reading in your mind. But if you say it out loud, if you're reading a book out loud and you say, don't do it, she whispered, that's stupid, right? Because she whispered. So you, the reader, if you're interpretive reading that, you need to whisper that. And you know it's going to be whispered because you prepared ahead of time. So you need to say, don't do it, she whispered. That's how it's different. So the same thing applies to citing sources. You want to say the source ahead of time. So you would say, according to the National Geographic, wolves have the largest natural range of any animal, second only to human beings. The reason we do that is for ethos. Back to that word again. It's for credibility. You want to establish credibility before you make the statement, because who are you? You're just some college student, right? You're giving a speech about wolves. Who am I? Who am I giving a speech about wolves? I'm not a wolf expert. I mean, I barely feel like an expert as a professor about this. So when you're listening to me and I go, wolves have blah, 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 why should you listen to me? So we want to say the source first and borrow somebody else's credibility. So I don't have the ethos, but National Geographic does. You probably trust them a little bit more than you trust me. I hope so. So that's why I say their name first. According to the National Geographic, wolves have the largest range, second only to human beings. Hopefully that makes sense. It's the same for anyone. So if you're going to quote somebody in your speech, which is a great idea to do, you're borrowing their ethos appeal. So the more impressive the person, the better. That also means the more despicable the person or the less trustworthy the person, the worse. So think about that. And that takes audience analysis. It's back to that because the same person can be trustworthy to one audience and completely not to another, right? Like we are all in the Pacific Northwest of America, which is generally a liberal area. So generally, my statements about Trump are probably well received. But if this class was being taught in Arkansas, it would be the opposite. It'd be very different. I would be fighting with all of you, and I'd probably be like, man, I need to work somewhere else. This is just a disaster of a job. That's how audience analysis works. It's weird. So you need to be thinking about that with your sources that you're going to use in your speech. It's not purely as simple as, according to Martha Stewart, blah, blah, blah. You want to go, will this group respect Martha Stewart? I mean, she is friends with Snoop Dogg. I know my professor's a stoner. What about the rest of this class? And you have to do that. You have to think that through. Like, is it going to work? Because some sources won't. And this is also true, by the way, just to piggyback on your essays that you write for your English classes. Your professors read those sources. And I have several times, I also teach English, several times been like, oh, why are you citing Rachel Maddow? I'm liberal, but she's a terrible source. Like things like that. So just be careful when you be careful of your sources. They reflect on you. They reflect on what you've chosen to share, right? So that's a big spiel about that. But as far as how to do it, piggyback, it's best to say it at the beginning. But this is a lot, and I want you guys to practice this. So right now, with all that blah that I just said, any questions? None yet? Okay, good. So what I want to do is so you guys hopefully before class went and downloaded a Word document that was how to orally cite sources. So in that document, I explained just a little bit in the beginning, like here's how you cite sources. And then I explain a couple of general tips, which I'm going to share right now. And then you can open that up and look at it along with me if you want. And then I'm going to put you in small groups to do an activity. So the general tips as far as orally citing sources, they're in that document for you to review later. First off, tell the audience your source before. This is the thing I've been saying for the last whatever. Tell the audience your source before you use the information. It's the opposite of an in-text. It's the exact thing I was saying. Anyway, that's point one. Point two is don't say quote, unquote, right? That's awkward. It's clunky. You can, I've seen students do this, and I count that. It works. What works for you? What makes you comfy when you're up there? Find your style, right? The third point is provide enough information about each source so the audience could, with a little effort, find them. This should include the author's name, a brief explanation of their credentials, the title of the work, and the publication date. So that list of things that it should include is loosey-goosey. I want you to think, what should I include that would help somebody find it, but also would be impressive? Right? You don't want to share details that aren't impressive. And as long as you've shared enough people to find it, like the title and the author are probably plenty. The date might not be important at all, right? Especially if it's old, you might want to leave that out. So you might want to just say the parts that make the audience go, ooh. So for example, here it says, in the 1979 edition of the Elements of Style, renowned grammarians and composition stylist Strunk and White encourage writers to make every word tell. So in that example, there's a lot of information about those people, but I think it's good information because Strunk and White are grammarians, which is not a famous thing that anybody's going to be impressed with. If I just said Strunk and White, famous grammarians, most people will go, okay, grammarians can be famous. That's somebody who's good at grammar. So like grammarians can be famous. I don't even buy it. So instead, talk about what book they wrote. The year though, the 1979 edition, that's when I might leave that part out just to be like, hey, they wrote a book. You don't need to know when, but they wrote a book and they're experts, right? You're trying to persuade people to be impressed. Even though this isn't a persuasive speech, there's a little secret. Every speech is a persuasive speech because you're trying to persuade your audience to believe you and listen to you. And part of that is your ethos appeal. Little secret. All right. The next point is if your source is unknown to your audience, provide enough information about your source for the audience to perceive them as credible. Typically, we provide this credentialing of the source by stating the author's qualifications to discuss the topic. So the example here is Dr. Derek Bach, the president emeritus of Harvard University and the author of Politics of Happiness, argues that the American government should design policies to enhance the happiness of its citizens. So read that list of impressive things, right? If you want it, that helps. This sort of, this is you borrowing the ethos of the source, and it's very effective. So I recommend doing it. But again, don't share more than you need to. Don't rattle off every book they've ever written unless it's important or unless it helps. And then the last bit here is provide a caption citation for all direct quotations and irrelevant images in your PowerPoint slides. So if you have a picture in PowerPoint, you need to have a little citation at the bottom. If you have a quote in PowerPoint, have a citation. It can just be the word. You can just put it. It doesn't have to be large. It just needs to be there, enough visible on the screen. Any questions about that so far? Guidelines? Excellent. So from here on, I think there are 9 examples. I don't think, I know. There are 9 examples of different things in there, how you would verbally reference different types of things. So what I want to do, because to me, verbally referencing is second nature, probably because I grew up with my dad and I've been an asshole my whole life. So I've like demanded sources my whole life. But if you haven't been the person who's done that, this might feel clunky and weird. So I want to practice. So I want to put you guys into new small groups. And in your small group, I'd like you guys to take turns going through the 9 of these and read when it's your turn. Take one, the first one, for example, if it's from a reference book, read the example. So you would typically include title, credentials, the date of the publication. And then it says this, the example is, in the 2005 edition of Simon's Market Research, considered by most to be the nation's leading authority on the behavior of the American consumer, notes, ... And then I want you to think, you can do it as a group or you can take turns, as long as you go through all 9 and the group is all involved. I want you to each, at least all of you, take a shot at this, right? At least 2 each. What could you say? Like, think of a different book, not that one. How could you reference a book? A book maybe you've read, like according to the name of the wind, blah, blah, blah. Who knows? I don't know what books you're reading. Could be the Bible, could be the dictionary, but you're just going to say, according to the, how would you phrase that? Practice it a little bit. See if it feels clunky. Get a little comfy with it and give it a shot. We're going to do this for not all that long. I want to do this for, let's do it for 7 minutes. So I'm going to pull you guys all back at 7:30. Any questions?
I had a question specifically about my topic and citing a source. If we wanted to cite a source that was significant for our topic, but was disproven, but the fact is you want to showcase that it was disproven, like it's something against what you're showcasing, and you want to show that it was disproven, does that count as citing a source if you cite from their book or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know where you're going with that, but that sounds interesting. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Yeah. A counter example. Exciting. It sounds like you're going it sounds like the persuasive speech already, but I'm excited. Yeah, no, that sounds good. Just cite it. Any other questions, guys? All right, let's do this. Let's give this a shot. 6 minutes enough for this? I bet it's not. We're going to do this for until 7:35. If you get done, go to the bathroom. Here's your rooms. What's going on with the sound? No sound here. Why was it getting quieter? My God, it's hot.
Hey, I have a quick question, Steve.
Yeah, Caleb.
I should have asked this for you in breakout rooms, but I think we're kind of confused. Are we supposed to be like improving something or just coming up with like our own book, like citing something?
I
I
want
think
you
I'm
to,
confused.
yeah, just practice each of the types, a reference work, a website. I want you to like just to, as a group or individually, just whatever, but practice coming up with how you would cite each one. Is that
Okay. Yeah, like so for example, for like if it was a book or something, like the book I did my speech on, I'd be like the Glass Castle published and like we're just making something up for
Yep.
like
just
okay.
to kind of give it a shot. So
Yeah.
I'm just worried
Okay.
people will not, and then
Uh,
sometimes with this speech, I end up like half of the class doesn't even do it. And I'm like, what happened? And
oh
so I'm having
no.
you guys, this is me trying something new.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
How do I go back in there?
Let me see if I can see.
Guys, yeah, I was just like Christine and Brian.
Is there not a button for you?
I don't think so.
Here,
No,
okay.
not
Don't push anything.
okay.
I think I can move you out of that room and then back into that
Oh,
room.
there we go.
Oh,
Okay, I got it.
don't join it. You'll join the
Oh.
wrong room.
Okay.
Okay, now join it.
Perfect. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
You wanna see what I got you from the store? Sorry about that.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So, with Love and I, just a quick gauge. So, how that went. So, the reason we just did that, and the reason we're going to watch this video here too, to hammer this home, last quarter, when I taught this class, my in-person class, about half the students did not cite sources with this speech and just lost all the points. And I was like, what happened? And I never got a good answer from them. I was like, I just think I just didn't teach it. I don't know. I thought it. So I'd love to get that what we just did was new. I haven't done that before. I'd love to get, do you guys think it generally was good? Generally was meh, generally was, and don't be worried about offending me. I would just love a general feedback from y'all. Christina, do you have feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I know initially our group was a little confused on whether you wanted us to read the actual examples and then improv, like what it was about, or if you wanted us to improv the entire thing. And so I think we got half of us went because we were
Okay.
kind of like, oh, is it this or is it that? And then I think maybe having like both. So maybe whether it's like a little bit more time allotted, just so you can say like, hey, practice, here, read this example and then improv the last bit so you can hear what that flow sounds like. Yeah. And now after everyone's gone, now I want you to improv the entire thing and then get feedback on it.
That's a great idea. That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, next quarter we'll get a better experience. Thank you guys for trying. So now I have a video to show you where these two students are going to explain the same thing. Just in case hearing it explained helps. And I got my audio to work, so yay. Here we go. This is short, it's only 6 minutes. Here we go. Let's use that.
So you've been asked to include verbal citations in your research speech, and you're wondering, how do I do that?
Well, we're students too, and we're here to help you do great verbal citing.
What is a verbal citation? Verbal citations are when the speaker tells the audience where he or she learned the supporting materials that is included in the speech. These citations are used for both paraphrased information and direct quotes.
Verbal citations communicate the speaker's source, the expertise of that source, enhance the speaker's credibility, and allow the listener.
That's something important for me to mention. You cite your source whether it's a quote or a paraphrase. So sometimes students share information that is blatantly, obviously not something they knew. Oftentimes it's numbers, like my students will rattle off, such as the history of my co-culture. In 1862, on January 3rd, this happened with this person and then this person, and dates and numbers. Tell us where you learned that, because I doubt you knew it. Maybe you did, but whether you're paraphrasing or quoting, share the source. It's also true in your essays.
To judge how much he or she trusts the source used by the speaker.
What should go in your verbal citation?
You need to make it clear what source you used to obtain your supporting material, that is, what you read or viewed. So you might include title of the article or video, title of the publication, the author or presenter, appropriate dates, and a qualifying statement that conveys the expertise of that source. For this, you might state the professional or scholarly connection to the topic, the standards related to the topic, experience related to the topic, and timeliness.
Why should those things be included in your verbal citation? Well, your audience has questions. They want to know why you think your sources are credible. And audience members are also wondering about the expertise and perspective of your sources. So let them know.
So what makes a source credible? The answer to that starts with your topic. As relates to that topic, what is the authority or experience of the writer or speaker? Or maybe a source is credible because of the professional or scholarly standards. For example, a political scientist writing about a political campaign, or a news reporter objectively describing what happened at a political rally.
So a source is credible if there is a professional, scholarly, or authoritative connection to the subject. Maybe that connection comes from the medium used, such as a news site having objective fact-gathering standards, or a website that focuses on medical research features a piece written by one of the researchers, or the organization in charge of an event puts information about the event on their website.
Let's look at some examples. Pretend you're doing an informative speech about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Take a look at this excerpt from the outline. There it is. Notice the in-text citation, parade history. That's where you need a verbal citation. After all, the audience won't see your in-text citation because they won't see your outline. So verbally cite.
So what should we tell the audience? Start with your works cited entry. What does it tell you? Look at your notes. Did you learn anything special about the source when you were doing research? One thing becomes really obvious for this example. The information about the Macy's parade is coming from the Macy's company site. So their expertise, they're the actual parade sponsors, and this is their parade information site.
So let's point that out. Here's what we might say to the audience. Macy's has a history section on its 2015 parade information website that included ...
Of course, there's not just one way to say this, so let's try something else. Macy's, the sponsors of the parade, made it clear in their history section of their 2015 parade information website that ... Well, you get the idea.
Here's another source that might provide facts for that Macy's parade speech. For this, we need to look around the website to discover that this is an information site for the marching community published by Ken Martinson. That means that the expertise of this site is connected to marching bands, so we might say something like this. Marching is an online information site for marching band news. According to Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, a 2016 event posting on that site, marching bands are selected around 18 months before the parade.
Still not sure what to do? Still wondering how to best decide what to say? Start with, why did I choose this source? And what makes this source special? In a basic sense, a lot of people will say the title of the source, the author's name, the publication or website, and the date it was posted or printed.
But pretend you're sitting in the audience. Would you know who the author is? Would the title tell you why you should trust it? Probably not. So in the verbal citation, tell the audience why to trust your source.
Now let's practice. Let's stick with the Macy's parade speech. We'll probably want to provide the audience with examples of the performers who are a part of the parade. So here's an article that appeared in the online Washington Post. The article listed the performers scheduled to be on NBC coverage of this parade.
Okay, so we know that Yar is a journalist. We know Washington Post is an online newspaper, follows certain journalistic standards for fact-checking, and this was a timely piece, published the day of the 2016 parade.
So let's try this. Washington Post online reporter Emily Yar's article, Thanksgiving Day Parade 2016, What Time to Watch and Who Has the Best Lineup, listed the performers who would be seen in the NBC coverage of the 2016 parade.
That's good, but another way we could cite it is, in the 2016 Thanksgiving Day issue of the Washington Post Online, reporter Emily Yar listed the performers slated to appear on the NBC coverage of the parade.
That's good too. It makes the timeliness, publication, and professional standards really clear. So let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. You need to include your plan on your notes.
The second most difficult thing, according to those same speakers, making it feel conversational, and that takes practice.
So it's up to you to plan, practice, and put the information you need on your speaker's notes. Hope we cleared what a verbal citation is and why and how to do one. Student to student, that's how to do a verbal citation.
All right. Now you know. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, the main thing, I think, is what they said at the end. Practice to make it sound natural. If you don't do this in your normal life, if you don't say, hey, according to wherever I found this information, it takes practice. But it can sound super natural, and it should. It should be as natural as just sharing wherever. You should be trying to share this information because it adds to the impact of what you're sharing, right? So think of it that way. Think of it not just as, oh, I gotta share the source. Ugh, how do I shoehorn this into my speech? But instead think of it as, how do I include this valuable information in my speech so that people can look it up, and also so that this source can add to the ethos of my speech. Hope that makes sense. So sources and how to verbally cite them. I'm done with that, I think. Are we done with that? You guys feeling good? Feeling pretty great? Okay, good. No worries if you're not. You're going to practice it next week. So the next thing to do is to talk about cue cards. We're at a weird time. We could take a break and then come back at like 7:55 and then go through, or we could just not take a break and I could power through and get in early. What do you guys want? Let's take a vote. How many guys want to take no break and end early? How many guys want to take a break right now for about 10 minutes? Well, that's actually really close. How many guys want to not take a break and end early? Okay, I think that one won, but wow, you guys are pretty split. So let's just power through. Okay, Sorry for those of you who want to take a break. Just tune out and don't listen to me, and everything will be fine. Rebecca, were you raising a hand to vote, or did you have a question?
No, I don't know what my computer did. I didn't even touch anything.
Yeah. I don't know what mine was doing with volume. I was looking at when you guys were in your small groups, I was looking at the chat and I was like, what on earth happened? Anyway, hi everybody. All right, let's talk about cue cards. So for this speech, you're going to need to use note cards, cue cards, they're called. They're called that because they cue you to know what to do. So with this speech, like I told you on Tuesday, I want you to try using them. You might hate them, you might not use them in the future, and that's okay. I just want you to try them for this speech. It's easiest if you buy them, just a pack of 3x5 or 5x7 cards. Those are the normal size. It's easiest if you buy those and use them. They have lines on them already. But if you don't have money, you can make your own. There are lots of ways. You can cut up cardboard to make your own, which sounds silly, but you really are only going to need a few, probably 6 to probably not even 10 cards. But you could also use paper. Paper is kind of flimsy and will be weird for this. So I recommend something stronger, but you're going to need something. So once you have something to write on, a card stock of some kind for this, then how on earth do you make them look? So that's what I want to talk about next, is how to make your cue cards look. I'm going to give you a bunch of information, but the main thing that I want you to start this with is to know that it's up to you. The main thing is make them work for you. So I'm going to share with a bunch of stuff. None of these are hard rules. There's a dog howling at just a second. There's a siren and a dog having a sing-along outside. So if, where was I at? Main thing is make it work for you. So I'm going to say a bunch. You might be like, I want to do that horrible one that's just chock full of, I want to go follow the George W. Bush model. And you know what? If that works for you, go for it. But let's look and see. So first off, general guidelines. I'm going to use PowerPoint for this because I love it. Okay, here we go. Coming back to here. So speaking from cue cards, this is what they generally look like over here on the right. So let's look at some general stuff. First off, write brief phrases instead of full sentences. This is a common mistake, and a lot of students think this is usually the first rule that students throw away and say, you know what, for me it's going to be full sentences. But I strongly urge you to use key phrases, maybe even bullet points. Just don't write out your whole speech to read it on the cards. That'll be difficult, and your speech will come across as if you're reading a script. You'll sound as if you are an actor who needs to practice a lot more. That's usually how that sounds. It might not, though, and you might be the one person who sounds wonderful that way. But I highly recommend using small phrases, not entire. Don't write your whole speech out, right? So that's point number one. This should be easy in a way because you should already be an expert on this topic. It's your co-culture. The main thing that I would be putting on those cards is like what is to keep me in order, right? Like if it was my co-culture about softball, I would want to have my notes to keep me in order and whatever I found in my research, because I'm not going to remember that. I found it through research. It's stuff I didn't know. So I'd want that on my cards, but everything else, as long as I would be like, point number one, uniforms. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I want to talk about uniforms. I can talk about uniforms all day once I know that's what the next point. So that's for me. But I teach this class. What's it going to work for you? So I want you to practice with these cards, and hopefully if you can bridge that gap from script to using your cards to actually cue your memory, you'll have taken a giant leap in your public speaking skill. So I'm hoping you can make that bridge. You can bridge that gap. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm hoping you can bridge that gap. If you can't, though, with this speech, no worries. That's a very advanced move. So first one, my advice, do not write full sentences. Second piece of advice, leave lots of white space on the card. There's a common mistake, and I did this when I was in college, of just packing the card with as much writing as possible. That doesn't help you. Use more cards instead and leave lots of white space so that your eyes can quickly see the card. Ideally, you will get to the point where you will practice enough that you won't be reading these cards anyway. You will use them to cue you. If you use the cards correctly and you practice a lot, let me get out of there, you will, like, say, for example, you pull up a card and it has 3 bullet points. You won't even read them. You will know when you see those 3 bullet points, your brain will go, oh, we're talking about uniforms. And you'll talk about uniforms because you've practiced the 7 times with these cards. That's how this works ideally, right? So lots of white space is helpful. It lets your eyes rest and they don't need to read everything. So second piece of advice, leave lots of white space, just use more cards. Third piece of advice is that use one side of the card. Don't try and save space by using both sides. The reason for this, there's a couple of reasons. One is you will get sweaty and nervous, and there's a good chance you'll smudge your card. So having stuff on the back is bad for that reason. The other reason is flipping cards over and keeping track of them is a giant pain. I can't remember if this is another piece of my advice, but I want to show you in this picture. Notice the upper right corner, there's numbers, 1, 2, 3. Do that. I did speech competitions when I was in college, and I so many times dropped my stack of cards before like a performance, and because I'm an idiot, and then would be like and because I wrote like both sides, covered it. Yeah, so I learned this lesson personally. Number them. It's a good idea, and keep only one side. Otherwise, you're doing a whole mess. So print. I don't know how many of you even know cursive. It's kind of dying. How many of you guys can write in cursive? Still a lot of you. Nice, good. I don't know if that's good, but yeah, it's weird, isn't it? That we're all like slowly losing that. Number 4, use a large font. So write big enough for you to be able to see it far away, because there's a good chance you will set your cards down on the lectern or the podium if this is not in this class. There's also a good chance you might put your cards next to your little camera. I don't know what you're going to do with them. So write large and then practice with them that way. Number 5, practice with these. Just practice with them. Practice with your cards. And during the speech, like I say here, rest your notes on the table in front of you. Because we're remote like this, you're going to have a different situation. So where should you put your cards? That's up to you. You can hold them like in front of you. If I was holding cards in front of, dripped water everywhere. If I was holding cards, like if you hold the cards like this, I'm using a coaster, but if I was holding cards like this, you can't see them, but I can look down at them. So if you can do things and be clever with where your camera can see and try and hide them, but you don't need to hide them. It's not like they're an embarrassment that you have cards. So that's one thing you can do. But if you want to be all sorts of clever, you can. I've had many students take their cards, and I think that they're taping them up next to their camera, maybe around, so that they can just look and see. I think one student had her whole speech printed on paper and just covered the screen, which is terrible for seeing everybody's feedback, but I think she was terrified. So she was working with what she had, and it worked. So think about yourself. And then last is don't apologize for looking down, because like I said, using note cards isn't a bad thing. So if you look down at your note cards and you notice it, don't feel bad about it. Don't apologize to us for it. For one, that makes us feel like, oh, should we be offended at this? And then people get offended. But it's natural. It's something you should be allowed to do. The same as like taking a drink during a speech or pausing to clear your throat. Those aren't things people should apologize for. That's being a human. So I think that's all of my pieces of advice from here. Yes. So let's look at an example. This is a cue card for somebody who's giving a speech about something to do with history. I wanted to have my document camera so I could like make a card, but then I was like, that's a whole lot. I can just show you one from somebody else. Basically, what I wanted to show you with this picture is a format that you could use for your cue cards. And really, it's just outline format. The general outline format that you probably learned in your English classes, that you probably use for your English essays, works just great. And that's having everything slowly indent, using capital letters, using numbers, using whatever works for you. You could use stars, you could use bullet points, you could use little Batman logos. As long as it works for you, then it works. So for this one, this speech, I don't know what this speech is about, but this card appears to be about a book called 1776 by David McCullough. So that's smart to write that down, because this sounds like information that the speaker might forget, right? Maybe this is a source they're sharing in their speech. And then they have main points, A, B, C. A, Britain. They have 1, Bunker Hill, June 17th, 1775. B, American Independence, Declaration by Jefferson. C, Battle for Trenton, December 26, 1776. Defeat Hessians, first U.S. victory. I don't know what they're doing in this speech, but I get what they're doing with these cards. This is stuff that's hard to remember. So they put the things on the card that are difficult to remember, like dates, people's names, place names, that kind of thing. That's exactly what I do when I do cards. So that might work for you. Things to avoid are things like generally like this is better. This is okay, but like this is an outline format, but it's huge, right? Instead, break it up into cards like this. These would be weird little paper cards, but break it up into individual chunks so that you are looking at one moment in your speech at a time, not the entire speech, but you're looking at that scene. And then you move to the next scene, and then you move to the next scene before you wrap up the whole thing. I mentioned George W. Bush. This is a note card that he used. So I wanted to show it because while I don't agree with his politics, he's an expert speech giver. And this is ridiculous. This is insane from my perspective, looking at it, but it worked for him. So I like to show this as an example of maybe throw all my advice out the window and find what works for you and become president. I don't know, but this is crazy. Like, I don't know why double dots and dashes somewhere, the lines that but it worked. So this is somebody who understands themselves and has figured out what works for them and did it really, really well, right? So while I'm giving you advice, think what works for you and then go with it. This is another one that I think is like, this is a good example of a bad idea. It's written in pencil, which is a disaster. You'll smudge pencil, don't do that. They have too many points on one card. Like, why have 1, 2, and 3 all on one card? Break those up, have them all be individual ones. Yeah, this is a mess. I show you this because we're gonna watch the speech that came out of this note card later this quarter. And it was a very good speech. Remember earlier I said there was a student who hated this class and was like, practiced every one of them? That's his speech. Don't do this. You can still, though, if you do this, give a good speech. So again, I'm like, don't do this, but it worked for him. So will it work for you? I don't know. The secret seems to be practicing. So practice. Whatever you're going to try with your note cards, you know, try something, but practice it. Practice it a lot. I say 7 times, practice it. Yeah, that's a good number. I know most students never even get to that number, but students who do well. So practice. Again, I'll show you, and I have this example picture, which I can post if you're like, oh, I still don't know how to make them, but this is just generally what, like a template of what you want yours to look like, right? You put your name at the top, your card number at the other side. Oh, maybe you have your attention getter, link and thesis, preview 3 main points, first main point, and then second main point, third main point, supportive details. I would have main points on each individual card personally. Review thesis, like this should be several cards, not 2, but you get the idea of how this could look for you, hopefully. So seeing all that, normally right now, we'd be trying this in class. I would have stacks of these cards. I'd be like, hey, everybody, have 10 cards each. Now let's do this together. But because it's a remote, there's no way to do that. And even breaking into small groups doesn't make any sense to do it. But I did want to show you this and at least ask if there's any questions. Yes, Christine.
Can you put that slide back up that you had with like the excuse me, the best practices that were like labeled?
Yeah.
I had a coughing fit and I didn't finish writing down.
How about I mean, was it the last one I showed?
No, it was the one that said like write brief phrases instead of full sentences, use lots of white space, label note cards with the numbers on them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the last one, right? Yes. Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions while that's up? It's probably worthwhile to mention sometimes students read their speeches off of their monitors and don't think that's obvious. It's obvious. So when I say like read off of something, and I don't know, sometimes I get students who I think that you can't tell, but it is. And so read off of cards, try it. It's worth points. You won't have to for your final speech, just this one. So, and hopefully you'll fall in love with it and use it for the rest of your life, but you know, give it a shot. Get all those, Christine? How's it going? Got it? Okay. I can also put anything, I can post anything wherever anybody wants.
Oh no, that was perfect. I just needed the last two. Thank you.
No problem. So no more questions about that? All right, let's move on then to opening and closing your speech. That's the next thing I want to talk about. So your last speech, you had an introduction that was not part of your speech, right? You had that stuff you needed to say, and then you launched into it, and then you had your speech, and then like your ending was like basically that, right? So for this speech, we're gonna have an actual introduction and an actual conclusion. I want you to have those. So what are those and what does that mean? So your introduction, I want to watch a video. Haha, who knew? But let's watch a video. You've seen this person before when we did our vocal warm-ups. I think she's delightful. So let's watch her talk about this. She's only going to talk about openers, but they're extraordinarily similar. So as you watch this, we're going to apply that to closers. Let's watch it and then talk about, yeah, let's watch this and then talk about it.
Oh, wow. I'm so nervous. Gosh, these lights are so bright. Is this mic on? Is there even a mic? Opening a speech is so stressful. There's nothing worse than walking on stage and not knowing what to say. Or worse, saying something super awkward. Can you see my hands shaking? Imagine you naked, imagine you naked, imagine you naked, imagine you naked. Gotta see clearly. Hello, Chicago. Oh, we're in Houston. Hello, Houston. In this video, I'm going to give you the best and worst speech openers for your next presentation, pitch, speech, or toast. Let's start with the worst ways to open. I hear these speaking cardinal sins all the time. Please don't open your speech by never start with anything technical. Gosh, these lights are so bright. Is this mic on? Is there even a mic? Friends, do a tech check or show up a little early. If you call attention to something not working, that's all your audience will think about. Never mention your nervousness. Do I look as nervous as I feel? Wow, there are so many people here. So I should start by saying that I am not a great public speaker, so this should be short. Many people think it's vulnerable or honest to start with how nervous they are, but actually for your audience, it's distracting. Why? The moment you mention your nerves, you make your audience nervous and they will begin looking for all the signs of your nervousness. It becomes a giant nerve-wracking wave that you start from stage. Never give a half-hearted welcome. Thanks for having me. Well, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for that intro. Do not start with a boring nicety, or worse, saying something nice but not sounding like you mean it. I can't tell you how many times I have seen people get on stage and say, "I'm so happy to be here," but look so incredibly unhappy as they say it. Fake, fake, fake. The only exception to this is if you can turn it into a joke, like the amazing Ken Robinson. He opened his talk with a boring nicety, but then made it funny. Let's watch.
Good morning. How are you? It's been great, hasn't it? I've been blown away by the whole thing. In fact, I'm leaving.
Okay, now that we've talked about the worst ways to start a speech, let's talk about the best. Speech opener idea number 1, use stories. The absolute best way to start a presentation is with a story. There is nothing better to capture the imagination and attention of an audience. Let's watch how David Brooks hooks you in right at the start with his story.
So we all have bad seasons in life, and I had one in 2013. My marriage had just ended, and I was humiliated by that failed commitment.
Woo! Hooks you in right away. He gets right to the heart of it. Stories help your audience feel right there with you. Here are some fill in the blanks you can use to start your next speech with a story. Once upon a time, I'm here for a reason, and it's an interesting story. The best thing that ever happened to me was... Speech opener idea number 2, your big idea. I love when speakers share their big idea right up front. They don't make you wait for it. They dive right in. Let's watch how Stacy Smith starts off her talk with her big idea framed in an interesting way.
Today, I want to tell you about a pressing social issue. Now, it's not nuclear arms, it's not immigration, and it's not malaria. I'm here to talk about movies.
Here's some fill in the blanks you can use to open your speech. You're here for a reason. It's... The single most important thing I want to share with you today is... Today, I want to share a big idea. Speech opener number 3, a quirky one-liner. No one loves humor more than me, and I can promise you that your audience will as well. If you dare, try to open your speech with something intriguing, very intriguing. Humor or curiosity is a great way to start a speech on a high. And please get creative. Think of an interesting fact about you, your audience, or your topic that can lead you into your content. For example, when I gave my TED Talk in London, I opened with my quirky one-liner. Hello, my name is Vanessa, and I am a recovering awkward person. You can also use an interesting fact or even a question to the audience. Try some of these fill in the blanks. Did you know? Do you ever worry about? Have you ever wondered? For example, I do tons of corporate workshops and trainings, and here are some interesting factoids I start with that hook the audience in. Did you know that it takes less than a second to make a first impression? Did you know that your nonverbal communication is 12.5 times more powerful than your words? Did you know that we are lied to 200 times a day? Got you hooked, right? I would love to speak to your group anytime. Call me. Okay, you are ready for your next speech. Your next question might be, how do I end my speech? I have 20 top closing lines from history's greatest speakers.
Yep, she does, but we're not going to look at those. We're going to talk about how to do it together. So those ideas, let's put this up here. Slideshow, current slide. Okay. Get up there. So here is a list of basically what she said. Let's talk about each one of these. So opener ideas. This is from the textbook, so which you, I believe, have read. Might be due this weekend, so you might not have read it yet. But here's text idea books. Opener ideas. Please show yourselves. There they are. So, and some of these overlap with her. So tell a story, refer to the occasion, refer to recent or historical events, refer to personal interest, use startling statistics, use an analogy, use quotation, question, humor. Those are all great. But they're not all great for this speech. Like not all of these work for everything, right? So which ones of these do you think would work well for this speech? Any thoughts?
I think starting with like a statistic or something would be
like about your co-culture, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Right? Like 30% of people are furries, and I'm one. So ta-da!
Yeah.
3 out of 10 of you are, like something like that. Yeah. 4, like it's like statistics can be really fun, right? Like you could say, what is it? I think it's 4% of people are gay if I was to do that one. And if I was talking to a room with at least, I can't do the math in my head, but there's some statistic where somebody in the room is probably gay. Like you could throw that out there and be like, what do you probably are? You know, you could do like a, according to whatever. Yeah, that's a good one. What else?
I think a story would be good because it's part of you. And so in order for it to be part of you, you probably have an arsenal full of stories that you can incorporate it. And then that will capture, she gives a list of different openings to help the audience connect with you on a more personal level. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's the best one in this list personally. A lot of these would work more than story, but since we're at story, let's hammer that one home. Story, like I think when we talked about this, we read that article. Let me unshare that. We read that article for our last speech about how the human brain is wired for story. It's true, and use that, right? Humans pay attention when a story starts. So if you want to catch everybody's attention, if that's what the point of this is an attention getter, and humans are wired to listen to stories, and the speech is about you. I mean, that's a perfect setup. So you don't have to start your speech with a story, but that's a really good use of this. Start off with telling us about your life, your experience. Tell us an interesting time when that has to do with your co-culture. It's a really good one. But all the rest of these could too. You could ask a question. You could share a quote. You could any of these, but you got to do something. You want to do something to catch our attention. So that's the intro of your speech. The end of your speech is similar. Oftentimes it's the reverse. So you could use all of these exact same things. Let me share that again. All of these would work as so there's the hook and the sinker. These all have lots of names. I'm using the fishing metaphor because I've been fishing twice in my life. But yeah, this is the fishing metaphor. So the hook at the beginning and then the sinker. I do those anyway. The sinker is the end of your speech, and you could do all of these reverse things, like using a shocking statistic or a quote, asking the audience a challenging question. But with this speech, you don't have to do that. You could be like, if you want to know more, here's more information. That's also a good ending, a good sinker, especially if you have a pamphlet or a handout as like your visual aid. Then you could end this with find out more. It really depends on the tone of your speech as well. If you just shared something really serious and somber, then you probably want to end your speech with something that honors that tone. So be thinking that way. But the last thing I want to mention here is a very clever thing you can do. So let me unshare. So if a story works as a really good intro, and you can use it as a conclusion, you can do this really cool thing where you can bookend your speech with one story, where you start your speech by telling a story, and then you say, we'll finish that later. And then your audience will be paying extra attention, waiting for that ending. It works. This works. This can be extremely frustrating if you don't end it. We're going to watch an example in a little bit where a student almost used this perfectly. Yeah, but it's very powerful when used right. You don't have to. You could have two completely different stories that have nothing to do with each other, but you could have one story that goes, and that is a really great way to use a hook and a sinker. So any thoughts or questions on this? How to do your intro? How to do your conclusion? Do you guys have ideas for how to do your intro and conclusion? Everybody feeling pretty good? All right. Well, I do want to end this class with putting you in small groups so that you can talk about intro and conclusion ideas, and so you can practice screen sharing with each other if you want to. But before we get to that, I want to end the class there. I do want to watch a few more examples. So, and analyze them, because this speech is when things get a little more complicated. So we watched one, the being a black bully breed owner. So I got a few more. This next one is the one I just referenced. Let's watch it right now. So in this one, this student, I'll let the student speak for himself. And so we're gonna start it. I'm gonna pause it probably a couple times and talk with you about it. But for the most part, hopefully you'll enjoy it. I think you will. It's definitely got, wait, did I share the right screen? No, I did not. I shared Zoom. There you are. Here we go.
It's still not hard. Hold on. So I want you to start when you can. Yeah, it's trying. Come
on. Line this up right.
I know a lot of people have seen on YouTube and TikTok about stories or videos of like, oh, motorcyclists got into altercation with a cop or road rage and shit like that. And that basically happened to me. My co-culture is off-roading and specifically racing ATVs and dirt bikes. And so what happens is, and specifically in the sand dunes. And so what happens is when you're driving, the sand from the tires behind you will kick up, and that is called a rooster tail. And so we usually go down to Eastern Washington. If you've ever been there, you'll know that everybody shows up with Confederate flags and is kind of like a little bit racist. And so while we were setting up camp, this guy was going straight up right next to our camp setup, going as fast as he can. And so it was very windy at the time. And so all the sand would go onto our grill, our food and stuff like that. And it really pissed me off. And so my dad was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's not really that much of a big deal. Me personally, I'm really of a fuck around and find out type of person. I don't really listen to people. And so what I did was I got on my ATV and I rode right next to his camp and did the same thing, but except riding straight past him, I kind of drifted a little bit and threw a whole bunch of sand on his camp. But there was a teenager over there, a girl, and I'm pretty sure that was his daughter, but I'll get back to that in a little bit. So my co-culture was obviously dirt biking and off-roading, and I really got into that because my uncle, he grew up on the countryside riding dirt bikes and all.
So that was his hook, right? What do you think? His delivery is rough. The guy showed up in sweatpants and Crocs for his speech. He's not earning the extra credit points for that. And his delivery is did he rehearse? I know he did not. I know he rehearsed like once. Him and his best friend did this. They relied on their charisma, which can get you awfully far in life. But the story, I'm interested, right? It's very interesting. I'm already like, oh, wait, what? Oh, there's a girl and you did what now? And what? And then he stopped at exactly the right moment. I'm like, okay, I'll give you another however many minutes to get to the end of that story. And now I'm going to listen to learn more about ATVs. You could do this. You could do this probably. If you have a good story that has anything to do with your co-culture, you could do this. Let's see how well he does the rest of his speech.
All that, and when he was my dad's coworker at Honda Seattle, he was like, oh, do you want to go riding with me? It'll be fun, blah, blah, blah. And back in my hometown in Fiji, we rode a lot of old Harleys and stuff like that. And so my dad got really excited. And then like 2 years later, my uncle sold one of his to ours. And that basically became a family heirloom, if you want to call it. And I got really invested into that. And it started off with me, actually I'll show a picture. But basically it started off with me sitting in front of my dad while he rides me around. It's kind of blurry, but this is me right here, and then that's my dad. And at first, I was really nervous. Even though we go 2 miles per hour, I'll be like, so the fuck that? And he'd be like, no, I'm gonna keep going. And so I guess that got rid of my scaredness. I don't know the word, but at this one point I started like really crying and stuff like that. He was like, shut up, and did a wheelie, and I was like, oh, it's not that bad. And so after that, I started learning how to ride by myself. And you know you're a member of this community if you own a piece of equipment or just know knowledgeable stuff. And knowing knowledgeable stuff ties into the language barrier of that within knowing vocabulary and just knowing about your shit. Because if you don't, I learned the hard way, you're gonna get made fun of, just like in every other culture. If you don't know most of the stuff, you're gonna get made fun of. And with this comes a very big risk of getting hurt. I personally have broken my collarbone before, and I have burn marks on my legs because I wasn't wearing the right protection. And actually, when I was doing research, I found this government website from the US CPSC, and it said that between 2016 and 2020, there's an estimate of 526,900 emergency injuries relating to OHV. So,
how he shared his source right there. What'd you think of it?
He didn't give any credibility to the website. He just said, according to this website called blah blah. And we don't know what that website is. It could be like soap opera website that just mentioned this statistic.
And he presents it as if he stumbled. Like he just accidentally found it. Yeah. It's not the strongest. Yeah, yeah. So what can we learn from that, right? Tell us why you use that source. Tell us why it's impressive. Tell us. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Heidi.
Dirt biking and all that. So it really does come with a very big risk. And also with broken collarbones and like scars and stuff like that is basically kind of like a symbol to this cult culture. And the way that you can also learn, all right, in this cult culture, you don't really like get taught anything. You have to do all the researching yourself. So watching a lot of YouTube videos late at night while eating cereal. And well, for me, my dad, he's a mechanic, and so he taught me most of the stuff that I know. So that's basically my source, my personal source. And so I'll show you a couple photos of me. This is probably in like 2000 something. This is my uncle's quad. This is the one that he sold us. I personally ride this one more because it's faster. I got used to it because I'm more experienced now. But I don't know, it's just, when I see pictures like this, it brings me back a lot of memories, and it's something that I value a lot. This is me. We recently just bought this bike, probably last year or 2 years ago, and this is probably like last Memorial Day. I was having a lot of fun, but I've never ridden a dirt bike like that before, and so what happens is there's a lot of power behind it, and in the sand, you don't really have traction, so you do this thing called a fishtail, and your back end goes like this and like this. Feels like you're about to fall off, but you're not. I would show videos of myself, but it's mostly of me falling off. And I don't also just off-road. I do have this. It's a really small motorcycle. You may be wondering how I fit on that shit. I don't, but I still ride it because it's fun. And yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.
How was that ending? Horrible. It was horrible. There's a story that didn't end. He just sort of, and that's my presentation. That's also a terrible ending. That's my
hit at the 8-minute mark.
It's like, and I'm done. So then a little bit more happens. One of the audience was like, all right, what about the story? And he's like, oh, right, yeah. This guy, by the way, was very nice to allow me to use this, knowing that I was going to use him as a negative example. I would love it if one of you could provide me a positive example to use in the future, because I've been using this for a year now, and I would love to replace it. But yeah, what a good sport. But yeah, so he finishes the story. Let's watch. It's pretty cute.
We need to hear the end.
So, the daughter. What ended up happening was that he was like, all right, let's race right now. If I win, then I get to bug you for the rest of the day. If you win, then I get to leave you alone. I was like, all right, cool. The thing about this is that in Eastern Washington, with country folk and being racist, also comes with everybody being drunk as hell. So what I understood was, this man is drunk. He don't know what he's talking about. He probably gonna go the opposite way when we start racing. So we start racing, we're going. It's probably a quarter-mile race, so pretty long stretch. And so we're going like head to head, but I like kind of like scoped out the area before we started racing. So I was on the right side, he was on the left, and I knew that a bump was about to come up. He hit that bump, he slowed down, he kind of spinned out, and so I ended up winning, right? Went back to his camp just to do what I did before, which was like throwing the sand on his camp. But I saw his daughter again, and so I quickly stopped, got off, took off my helmet. And I mean, like, I'm a little chubby right now, but at that time I was pretty skinny. And so I was being stupid as well. I was riding with no gear on, no shirt and stuff like that. So my confidence was like really up there. I was like really egotistical. So I started talking to the daughter. I was like, hey, what's up? Let me get your Snapchat, let me get your Instagram, how you doing? And then I was like, I think you're pretty cute. As soon as I said, I think you're pretty cute, guess who pulls up? The dad. And so the dad was like, fuck out right now, blah, 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 blah. I was like, whatever, dude. I got your daughter's Instagram. You can stay mad about it. And so I left. And then after that, I kept running back and forth just to spy on their camp. And the daughter would just look at me every single time. And then you could camp out there, but I was staying at a hotel over there that's like right in front of the lake, and turns out they were staying at the same hotel. And after that, it kind of got a little bit awkward because I always see the dad like walking next to the hallways and stuff, and I'll just be like this. And yeah, that's the end of the story.
That's awesome. All right. So, what can we learn from that? That would have been a great ending. That would have been a great ending for a speech. He even performed better when he was done with his speech. He performed, right? Like he had more volume, he had more energy when he wasn't performing, which says to me that when he had stress, he didn't do as well, which says to me, practice. Oh my God, practice. Stop relying on your charisma, which is what I told him. I told him, you're going to go really far in life with your charisma, but stop it. Practice. And he was like, oh, thanks, Mr. Brown. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. His family owns a business. He'll be fine. But what about you? Does your family own a business? I don't know. You might need to practice. So that was that one. What can we learn from that also? Another thing that we can learn from that is charisma is extremely valuable when it comes to public speaking. It is. And charisma can be practiced. Just being charming up on stage is extremely valuable. Practicing being charming. If you're gonna fail in every direction, but still have that, yeah, the world rewards it. All right, let's watch one more. Nope, not that one. Let's watch one more example. Yes, one more. All right. So this one, I think, might resonate with, well, actually, won't resonate with you. Anyway, we'll see. This student, I like this one because, for one, it's a home speech instead of in front of a class. So it's like what you'll be doing. And this student was also in the funeral program. And because their speech is about being a collector of oddities. So I think this student did a very good job. I think let's break it apart and see what we think about like what parts were especially good. And let's screen share. And here we go.
Okay, everybody else, yeah, they're coming in. They're turning on their cameras. Good.
Right. I have note cards, so.
Perfect. Excellent. Thanks for showing me. All right, I'm going to mute myself, Emma. It's all yours.
All right. Do you enjoy the stranger things in life? Perhaps you're attracted to nature. Or maybe you're fascinated. Okay, let me actually turn off my motion blur. Maybe you're fascinated by medical history. Or perhaps you are interested in Victorian funeral rites. If any of this sounds fascinating to you, you could be one of us. Welcome to the weird world of oddity collecting. Oddity collectors are based.
So her intro, what do we think? Very good. I was saying it's very good. I think that she did great. I'm glad she caught the blur early. The way she handled it was great. I didn't take any points away for the fact that she had it on and forgot to take it off because she handled it well. If she went, my blur, shit, and then turned it off, that would have been losing points. But because she went, oh, let me turn that off. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. She was a professional about it. She was in charge. It looked intentional. That's good. So that's excellent. Also, you can tell she has like a way she speaks. Her voice has an interesting kind of tone to it. And she kind of has she has a sound to her voice. And it comes across really well with the way she practiced and how she wrote her speech. She's leaning into her skills. She's leaning into who she is in a really cool way, I think. And she also, the way she starts this, she asks all these questions to see if you are an oddity collector. Did you catch that? She didn't start this saying, I'm an oddity collector. She started this by saying, hey, do you like this? You might be like me, which I haven't seen another student do. I think that's brilliant. You can steal that. That's a great way. I mean, talk about bringing the audience in. You're like, you're just like me. You're a freak just like me is a brilliant way to pull the audience in. So I think A+ for her intro. Steal all of that. Where's my cursor? There it is.
basically just people who enjoy collecting strange things. Now, this is a very broad definition. The most popular, honestly, is taxidermy. So preserving little wildlife and things like that. Medical stuff is also extremely popular, like this prosthetic eyeball I have. But really, again, it depends on the collector. Merriam-Webster defines curio, which is the items we collect, as something such as a decorative object considered novel, rare, or bizarre. You are a member of this community if you collect weird stuff. That's pretty much it. Our main symbol, definitely that everybody in the community at least knows if they don't have one themselves, is the curio cabinet. I have mine sitting actually right next to me. I can't show you because it would be awkward to turn everything around. But most of us have a giant cabinet where we stick all our weird stuff in it. So that's that. For our language, there's really not a language, but most of the words that we do use to just
to point it out, her laughing and her like mood is great, isn't it? Like the fact that she just is so lighthearted and laughing at this and keeping it lighthearted is infectious, I think. So another thing you can steal. It's just who she is. So just be yourself with this. This is you that you're presenting to us. Another thing I thought was pretty clever of her. And I don't think she did that on purpose. I think it's just who she is.
describe what we collect as curios, oddities, curiosities, and of course the curio cabinet. Also taxidermy and entomology are also extremely popular parts of this. Try not to wreck everything. Our values are pretty simple. It's basically just respect everybody and respect the objects. We all love what we collect. And so a big thing that we show to each other, even if we're not into something that somebody collects, we still respect their collection. We also respect others just because it attracts a lot of weirdos. So we all try to be respectful of everybody's quirks and everybody's niches and everything like that. And we also are very respectful for the item's history. Some items do come from rough historical backgrounds, and most of us like to be aware of that so that we know how to collect in a respectful way rather than being disrespectful to other religions or cultures or historical time periods. For behavioral norms, there really aren't any. Again, it basically attracts a lot of strange people who might not have even a normal behavior norm. So basically just, again, showing respect and kindness to anybody and everybody. Our activities and ceremonies pretty much is just going to oddity expos. The biggest one in the United States is the Oddity and Curiosity Expo. It travels everywhere. Typically here in Seattle, it comes right around Halloween, which is my favorite holiday, so it's perfect timing for me. The other smaller ones are like just any expos. There's a lot of like makers markets where you have local artists that work with taxidermy or entomology and anything like that. I will say there is some taboos in our culture, and that is mainly just making sure you know the sources of your curiosities. And that is just because if you're dealing with taxidermy, you want to make sure that you're getting them from a place that does not kill for display. The expo that travels that I mentioned states on their website that all of our vendors are required to source sustainably, and we do not allow the sale of real bats or human remains at our shows due to the lack of confident confirmation that these are ethically, respectfully, and responsibly sourced. There was an issue with bats where recently they were being killed a lot and taken and packaged to sell at these expos, and when they found out, they put a stop to it. So that is a big part of our community, is making sure that the animals that we all love and want to keep around with us are being able to live their best lives, and then we can take care of them afterwards, which is what I do. I love to hold on to them, and I give every single one of them a name just as my way of honoring their life and being a part of mine now. If you want to learn more fun things about the collector culture, I definitely recommend watching the TV show Oddities. It's on Prime Now and Discovery Plus. Obviously, since it is a TV show, it might be acted quite a bit, but you do learn some very interesting facts. There's some very strange people on it, and you do learn a lot about like all the little bits and bobs people might collect. And thank you for letting me share my curio cabinet with you.
Woo! Excellent work, Emma. That was very interesting.
All right. So what do we think of that? What do you think of our ending?
That was great.
I agree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like.
Funny thing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, please.
Oh, no, I was like, the funny thing is that Oddities and Curiosities show, my husband just sent me a link. He goes, look what's coming to town. Doesn't this sound cool? And that was literally yesterday.
Nice.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I was like, oh yeah, that looks great.
That's amazing. Well, there it is. Woo. That's yeah, and I love how your ending, like, thank you for the way she thanked us for like visiting her cabinet. Like that she's classy and it was really well done. Like the welcome to, if you want to know more, was great. And then thank you for visiting and learning more about her was brilliant. So steal all of that, right? Steal any of that works for you. That's the idea. All right, so that was some good examples. And we are almost out of time. So the last thing I want to do, put you guys back in small groups and to end the night. So in these groups for now, I want you to discuss a couple things. I want you to discuss intros and conclusions just to make sure everybody has ideas that, you know, you don't have to nail it down, but for a hook and a sinker, if you have any ideas, maybe you could brainstorm with your group, like, if you have story ideas, would this work? Do you guys even think that this is interesting? Ask your little group. And then if anybody in your small group thinks they're going to be using a digital presentation of any kind or sharing pictures digitally during your speech, in your small group, try practicing screen sharing tonight. Try doing that in your small group. Small groups will be small. I'm going to remake them quite small so that this won't take very long, but also so that everybody can do that if you want. So. And then you are free to leave. Oh, that's way too small. Okay. You're free to leave from here. But before I open those, any questions? All right, guys. Thanks for a good class tonight. And there are your rooms. Where is that? I'm gonna end the recording. If you've been watching this, thanks for following. If you want to practice your speech, email me and I'm happy to practice. Otherwise, see you next week.